Chapter 16, Creative Movement. The importance of movement activities for young children is that they begin to use their large and small muscles in ways that you plan for them. This is how children learn, plain and simple. They physically manipulate their environment to figure it out. And so creating and designing activities for them that will incorporate their large and small muscles will encourage them to use them even more. In terms of motor coordination, as kids practice a skill over and over, their motor coordination is improved. Sometimes you'll see children doing this when they're playing, and they practice a motor skill repeatedly, especially on new tasks that they're learning. And this starts all the way with little tiny children learning to pick something up and drop it where they want to, all the way to children practicing crawling up and down a step. Children who are learning to jump off of a step or maybe 2 steps high. That's a very exciting things for kids to be able to do. Riding a bike, hula hooping, jumping rope. These are all things once kids figure out and get over the hump of how they can do a new skill, they love to practice it. And the practice makes perfect. Rich opportunities for development of their total self. Both physical and emotional development occurs as children learn about their environment. Creative movement activities help children with their speed, their attention, their retention of information, and their enjoyment of learning. If you think about some of the things you might have learned as a child, if, for example, something that goes along with like a little movement or the head, shoulders, knees, and toes song that helps you remember, things like that. When you incorporate children's music and movement and bodies into the learning, they will remember things better instead of just labeling, what is this, what is this, what is this? You have to make it fun and get their whole selves involved. There are a lot of benefits to creative movement. They are listed below. In terms of sensory awareness, all of a child's senses are engaged during movement activities. Visual, auditory, and tactile, kinesthetic senses also engaged. With some examples of visual, auditory, and tactile, children are maybe watching someone else in terms of visually they're having to watch someone and imitate movements or watch someone for a cue as to when to make a movement. They're listening with their ears to hear either the music or the directions. And if you think about their tactile senses, they're feeling their bodies in space and how their body is when it moves in the directions that they're supposed to make it move. In terms of social development, you want to encourage children to interact as they move. They will learn to express themselves, cooperate with others in movement activities. You can have kids working together to make letters out of their bodies on the floor, or to do a relay race or a relay obstacle course. So there are ways that you can incorporate creative movement so that it is a social activity as well. Body awareness. Obviously, like we talked about just a few minutes ago with the songs and the naming the body parts, you can learn body parts and teach body parts to young children. Spatial awareness, where their bodies fall in space, is something that's huge for kids. They don't just know that if I stand here and swing my arms, it's going to hit so-and-so. Sometimes they don't realize that until it happens. So the more activities you can do using their whole bodies, the more they're going to understand where their body is in relation to other things without having to wait until they find out. Rhythm and coordination and control, all of these things will give them a better mental picture of their own bodies in terms of how, like I said, where they are in space and how they relate to other people. Concentration promotes self-control, which in turn helps the child focus and concentrate. Creative movement activities definitely require concentration, and for the child to really be focused and planning on what their body is going to do to follow the directions or imitate the person in front of them. Personal development is something that also is impacted by the creative movement. When we look at this, we think about self-esteem, and self-esteem will result from successful creative movement activities done within the classroom. And so basically, like when the teachers are planning activities, and maybe they're seeking out the students' input for the way they should move their bodies or the animals they should pretend to be, or if the teacher says, we need to get over to line up for lunch, who has a great way for us to move over to get in line? And someone might say, let's hop like bunnies because it's Easter. When the teacher recognizes that child's input and then everyone acts upon it, it really gives the child a boost to their self-esteem and to their self-image. So they're getting kind of a personal development boost as well when they're doing creative movement activities. They also learn to respect, recognize, and appreciate differences in the way they do things and the way other people do things in terms of how they're able to move their bodies and how other people are able to move their bodies. When planning creative movement activities, you want to make sure that you are focusing on the characteristics of the age group. On page 378, there's a really good chart of growth and development characteristics. So when thinking about this, you really want to be mindful of each age group that you work with. They each have their own skill set to work on. They're going to need lots of opportunities to practice the skills in order to learn them. And you want to incorporate the same skill maybe into a variety of different activities. For example, if you're working on hopping on one foot, you can have that be part of an obstacle course. Kids could practice hopping on one foot to get in line. Kids could practice hopping on one foot while they're waiting for the bus or for their parents. You could have kids hopping on one foot in doing like a little conga line around the classroom. So you want to make sure that you're not only working on just one skill in one time and place. In terms of developmental level, even within an age group, children's developmental levels are going to differ. And this is a big thing because we talk about this quite a bit. You want to make sure that you know each of your individual children very, very well so that you can set appropriate expectations for each individual child. You want to allow time for children to be creative. Always allow time within each day to be creative, every single day. Additionally, you want to use music and poetry to stimulate children. Children love the repetitive nature of music and poetry, so it's something that is very exciting for them when you use those within the classroom. You can try the mirror game when listening to music, having kids repeat what you're doing. If you're dancing or if you're just making facial expressions, that's a good way to keep them tied into the music. Remind students about personal space so that they are cognizant of, especially if they're moving around in a large group. And then another thing when you're planning creative movement activities you want to consider is that you can read a developmentally appropriate poem and then have the children act out what they've heard. WALA.org has great online resources, and so you feel free to check that out and see what kinds of things you can find to use with your students. So something that we would have done tonight had we all met in class would be to brainstorm some ideas of ways to use creative movement in the classroom. Just to give you a quick suggestion, you could try having kids write upside down, like on their backs, and tape the paper to the underside of the table. You can have children pretend to be different animals when they're going to line up for lunch or for going home. You can have a spinner with lots of different types of movements on it, and they would spin a spinner to see who has to do what. So there's a lot of fun ways you can incorporate it. If you would like to write down 3 or 4 ideas you might have, we can share them the next time we meet, and we get a chance to watch the videos that I was going to show you tonight. They're actual DVDs, so I can't load them to Blackboard for you to watch. So we will watch them the next time we meet on April 16th. But after we do those, you might even have some other ideas about ways you can use creative movement activities within the classroom. The videos are really good and have a lot of information, so I'm excited for you to see them. But anyway, you can, like I said, you can go ahead and kind of jot down a few ideas of things that you might do in your own classroom that are neat or interesting or things you have seen other teachers do. And like I said, we'll talk about them next time we meet. Chapter 17 discusses creative music. Some of the goals for music activities are listed below. Things that oftentimes adults have a hard time doing, even when they're working with young kids, is overcoming that adult approach to music. Adults think that everything has to be sung properly and in tune, but kids want to just have fun and sing and dance and be crazy, and they don't know if you're singing the right notes, if you're a little pitchy, if you're a little flat. That's not the important of the music program in a preschool classroom. The important part is for you to have fun with the students and teach them that music can be fun and a great way to release some energy. You want to encourage spontaneous, open attitudes. Explore instruments with your students, and if they see you having fun, they're going to as well. They won't feel as insecure if they see you trying something new that you've never used before, giving it a go, figuring it out for the first time. They will feed off of that. You want to maintain children's natural appreciation of music. Kids love music. Babies love music. A lot of animals even like music, So you want to make sure that you offer a wide variety of musical activities, instruments. You can make your own instruments. You don't have to buy fancy ones. And let them watch kids using different instruments, maybe some videos, or on YouTube you can watch children doing all kinds of things. They have some actually really good videos on YouTube of kids trying different instruments. So check those things out as well. Opportunities to sing a wide variety of songs. It doesn't have to always be Kids Bop or Disney music. Think outside the box. A lot of people now really enjoy a lot of the pop music that's out and some of the country music and the blues and the folk songs. It doesn't have to always be kid music. It does need to be appropriate, but it doesn't always have to be children's music. Exposure to all kinds of music. You want to have different rhythms, tempos, moods, cultures even. If you have kids in your class that have a different cultural background, see if their families will send in some CDs or some music from their native country or their native culture. That would be so exciting to have in the class. You don't always have to play loud, like hopped up on energy kinds of music. It can be very calm. It can be very mellow at times. You can even have, some sad music and talk to the children. How does this song make you feel? What do you think of when you hear this type of music? And then see if they start to kind of tie emotions and this moves on into the next thing, of feelings and emotions being expressed in music. How are they associating their feelings and emotions with the music that they're listening to? Playing simple instruments, again, you can make them. They don't have to all be bought from a catalog, which can get very expensive, but there are a lot of really cool instruments you can make for not very much money. And then as a teacher, you want to make sure you know the basic concepts of music. You don't have to be a music professor, but you do know when music is loud and when it gets softer. When it's really, really fast or when it's really slow. You know that some notes are high and some notes are very, very low. So you can kind of teach kids about those types of things where they're recognizing that versus just passively listening to music, and that just gives them more of an appreciation for it. In terms of teaching songs, on page 400, there's actually a chart for appropriate music experiences for kids. But when you think about songs that you want to teach, you want to choose songs with natural appeal. They should be culturally sensitive, but it doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't have to be limited to kid music. You can kind of find lots of different types of music. Of course, we probably know, if you've worked with kids, that not all children are going to participate. They're not going to find music exciting or enjoyable. Some kids may even really dislike it or hate it. You don't want to pressure those kids to participate or humiliate them for not participating. If you just let them kind of come into it as they want to, then they will eventually probably warm up. It may just be a situation where it's a new student and they're not comfortable in the classroom in terms of other people, and maybe they don't want people to see them, moving or dancing or singing. But sometimes, usually they'll come around, and they may not ever, but you just need to kind of take them as they are and let them feel how they want to feel. You want to choose a song in the right key for children. Now, again, that doesn't mean you have to be somebody who's very skilled at music. I certainly am not, but I know that this, for example, the Star-Spangled Banner might be a bit of a stretch for preschoolers. So just pick kind of easier types of songs. Be aware of learning songs as a complicated process, and it can be. So you don't want to have a lot of words, a lot of verses. Things should be repetitive in music for children. You shouldn't have 6 stanzas for them to memorize that are all different, because it's going to take a long time for them to learn a song, and you don't want to frustrate them having so many things to remember. On page 403, the book gives us 4 different methods to present songs. That's a great page to focus on and look at. You always want to make sure you learn the song first yourself. This is so important to know first. It comes to you. If you are looking at a piece of paper and you don't remember the tune that you're going to sing the song to, then kids are going to realize that, and it's going to be kind of boring for them, and they're going to look at you like, what is going on? So make sure you know the song really well, like you can just sing it and teach it to them versus learning it at the same time they are. Keep and use a song list throughout the day. Song lists are great. On the next slide, I'll show you some different types of things that you can do. So on this page, you'll see some different pictures. These are cards I would have had in my classroom. I would have cut them out so that they were individual squares and laminated them. And then I would have had them in a bucket. And at the end of the day, this is typically when we would do this type of thing, at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. But one of our closing activities was always at the end of the day to have song bucket. And kids could come up and take a turn pulling out a song, and we would sing whatever got pulled out. The first one was just a picture of dancing. The second one is The More We Get Together. The third song is Peanut Butter and Jelly. And so they're just pictures that kind of depict what the song is about. You can see Row, Row, Row Your Boat, Twinkle, Twinkle, Where is Thumbkin, 5 monkeys jumping on the bed. There are a whole lot of them. And you can make up a little picture like that to go with any song you can think of, or cut out pictures and laminate them from magazines or from the internet. You don't have to use the same type of cartoony pictures that I have here, but it's just a neat way for kids to have something that as soon as they pull that out, they don't have to read to know which song that they're going to be singing or that the class is going to be singing. All of those songs either had hand motions that went along with them, or I would also use some sign language in those songs so that they weren't just sitting and listening, but they were also watching and using their hands and their bodies at the same time as their mouths and singing. So it kind of tied it all in together even more for them. In terms of variety in the music program, you want to vary the rhythm of the program, the choice of music, the presentation, and even the schedule, so that it's not so predictable and it's not the same old songs every single time. Play games with music, things like charades, musical chairs, freeze, the hot potato, things like that are so fun. Hullabaloo is a great game that you used to be able to get, and I think you can still buy it, but it's not very much money. You can get it at Toys R Us. It's one of the cranium games, and any child can play it, whether they know their shapes or they know their animals or they know instruments. They will all be able to play it to some degree, and it's a really fun game. There are lots of other things you can think of. If you want to jot down some extras, other types of games that include music, we can talk about those later as well. Cross-curricular use of music. You don't just play music at nap time or at music time. So maybe you do it during snack time, or maybe during transitions, or when children come in the morning, you have a different type of song or a theme song that's played for that week. So you can change it up. It doesn't have to only be at instrument time or music time. You can use music in the Dramatic Play Center. For example, you can have some different kinds of Christmas music available if you have a winter theme or some winter songs going on. If you have, what are some other things? You can have some types of bunny music that, sings about bunnies and Peter Cottontail and all that kind of stuff around Easter. Lots of different things, but you can always change it up so that kids can, use an MP3 player, or if you happen to have an iPod or a CD player, whatever you have in your classroom, you can go online and download music or download songs and burn them onto CDs. If you have 5 Little Monkeys, you could use this book or song as a guide to all of your other activities in your classroom if you think about it. Let's say you chose the book 5 Little Monkeys and you wanted to make that your theme for a couple of weeks. You could, or for your Dramatic Play Center for a couple of weeks, you could add bananas to your Dramatic Play Center, monkey ears, tails, lots of other things too. Anything you can think of, you could pretend, you can get some brown bulletin board paper and make a tree, and some green and make like a palm tree or something, and have some bananas in there. I mean, lots of ways to incorporate things that go along with a song into a center so that the whole center comes alive for kids. When it comes to using instruments, you want to make sure the book suggests some strategies. They suggest that they're used for a purpose, that you set up rules for them to be used, you let children practice with them, and then you have a really good start and stop signal for using instruments. Instruments shouldn't just be for when kids can go over and get them and be as loud as possible and bang them as hard as they can. You can teach them how to use the instruments and let them have a good time with it and be kind of free with it, but you want to make sure that they do use them appropriately, because that then transfers into how they will treat instruments as they get bigger and bigger, and just general respect for someone else's things. You wouldn't want them to walk into someone's house and pick up something that they have and start banging it as hard as they could if they'd never seen it before. Same thing with the instruments. Set up the rules for their use, very basic rules. We don't hit these against the floor. We don't hit them against other people. We only shake instruments that are supposed to be shaken, like maracas. We don't hit them against one another. If you have a triangle and the little bar that goes with it, you may take the bar and hit the triangle, but not anything else. Things like that. Let the kids practice with them a little bit. And then when you are ready to do some rhythm practicing or make some music, a good way, you could have a green go sign and a red stop sign, or just some hand signals. Hands up means everyone should stop. When you put your hands down, they're allowed to play. Just a good starting and stopping signal so that they aren't just in a free-for-all and you've lost control of the class. Help this teacher is something that we would have talked about in class. You have a friend who's a teacher. She insists that music is not fun for her students because she doesn't know how to play guitar or piano, and she doesn't sing very well. She thinks the kids are just going to laugh at her, so she rarely does music activities much beyond just putting on a CD and letting them listen to background music. What would you tell her to help her see that this may not be the best thing for her students? So think about what you would say to this teacher and some justifications from what you've learned from reading chapter 16 and 17, and for why what justifications you can give her as to why it is so important for teachers to do more than just play CDs in the class. Why is it important for her to participate and to set an example for music above and beyond just listening to it? Think about what you've read and support your answer. Looking ahead from here on out, next week is week 12. We'll be doing chapter 21 online. The post number 6 will be due, quiz number 6 will be due, and assignment number 5 will be due. Remember, I changed the due date for that. I think I might actually change that assignment's criteria, so please check back in the next couple of days before you submit assignment 5, just to make sure you have it correct as to what you're supposed to do. The following week, week 13, which is April 16th, we will be back in class. We will talk a little bit about chapter 16 and 17 and watch the videos that I mentioned, and we will also talk about chapter 18, which is creative language experiences. It does say that there is an assignment due in class. I'm debating on whether or not we're going to do that assignment or if I'm going to change that one as well. I'm going to think about that one over the weekend and get back to you on that. But it will definitely be posted in plenty of time if I need to have you bring something on the 16th to class. Beyond that, I didn't put it on this piece of paper, but I'm looking at the calendar. We have another week off. Week 14 is online, and that's chapter 22. Post 7 is due on the 26th, and then all of a sudden it's April 30th, and your final projects are going to be presented in class. I have another YouTube video that I'm going to be working on regarding the final project for you to listen to. I'm going to go into great detail and explain what you're supposed to be doing, and then the next time we meet, we're going to talk about it in detail even more. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to call me, text me, email me, and I will get back to you. But I'm going to try to explain that for you as much as I can via this method right here with the slides and the video. So look for that on YouTube in just hopefully if I can get it up this evening. If not, maybe tomorrow. And then May 7th, the last class. I can't even believe how fast this semester's gone by. The final test will be on chapters 12 to 22. That's test 2. If you have an A going into test 2, I typically say that you are allowed to miss the final. But I'm going to check everyone's grades and see if that's the case, and I will let you know if you don't need to come back for the test. There are more slides attached to this, but it's just chapter 18, and I had already given you those, so I didn't delete them off of here, but you don't need to worry about going on further with the rest of the slides. This is the end of this presentation. Thanks.